We need electeds who are not going to be afraid of the government's threats and their federal overreach. We need electeds who are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with us when our communities are being brutalized. If you're seeing it from the distance of your phone, or if you're at a protest and you're recording selfie videos while people are getting shot at, then go home.
Press the button to begin.
Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Social Primate. This is your host, Eddie Aguirre, and today we have the one and only, the powerful Johnathan Hernandez, Councilmember of the city of Santana. What's up, man?
Thank you for having me today. I'm honored to be here.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. And I was just telling you a little bit before the show, I had the opportunity to meet you last year under different circumstances out at the Chicano Moratorium, which is almost about a year ago because we're almost in August at this point. I was able to interact with you for a couple minutes, and I didn't know it was going to lead to a conversation and us meeting together here.
Yes, no, likewise. It's an honor to meet you, brother. When we connected at the Chicano Moratorium, it was your interview that you did with the Santanero Ben Camacho that really caught my attention, and it was a story about LAPD suing a journalist over public records, and that story I found to be groundbreaking, and when you did a podcast episode uncovering more information on that, I just knew, I was like, this is a platform people need to support, they need to be aware of, and this is what the freedom of press is about. It's about stories that are transforming California. In the case of LAPD versus Ben Camacho sets a precedent for public records. So, yeah, I was very thankful to see your interview and to see that people are shining a light in dark places.
Yeah, thank you, man. I think it's important that you bring that up, just, the idea of independent journalism or just having the freedom of the press. And I think specifically in these moments that we're facing right now, because I think to one extent or another, many of us have been kind of thrown into this position where we're now documenting what's going on, right? Like, it's not in our title and it's not our role, but because of what's going on, we have to jump into those positions to protect the communities around us.
It's facts.
And whether we want to or not, some of us have become journalists in a sense, right? Or at least some sort of resource.
Voice.
A voice, exactly. And I think, again, you've proven to be one of those voices, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because I think it's important that we highlight individuals from different regions, right? Not just from where I'm from, because it shows that we're all fighting the same struggle, we're all going through the same fight, and we're all facing these moments of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And to get into that, right? I think you said you grew up in Artesia Pilar, right? That's a neighborhood in Santana.
Yep.
Before we get in a little deeper, tell me a little bit about your background. Like, how did you end up in Santana?
So my family, like many families, we migrated from Mexico to Santa Ana. And the story for a lot of families that end up in Santana was they thought Santana was L.A.
Yeah.
And so they made it past the border, and they're like, all right, this must be L.A. And it's a majority Latino city, but they're in Santana, right? My family story is very unique in the sense that my great-grandfather, Jose Lopez, joined the Bracero program and eventually fought for his citizenship in a world war.
Yeah.
He was able to also bring over two family members from Guadalajara, Jalisco. That's where my family's from, San Juan de los Lagos and La Chona. And eventually the two family members that were brought over were my grandfather and my grandmother, respectively Enrique Prieto and Indelisa Lopez Prieto. Rest in peace to my grandparents. But they came over to Santa Ana and they started a family. My grandfather became a union worker for the laborers, Local 652. My grandfather, Jose Lopez, who was a veteran and also was a part of the Braceros program, he too was a member of the laborers, Local 652. So my family story on my mom's side begins with migration in the 50s. My father's side of the family is native to California. My father's side of the family, ironically, was from the Palo Verde, what a lot of people consider Chavez Ravine.
Yeah.
Right? And my family was displaced when the Dodger Stadium was built. That's how my dad's side of the family ends up in Santa Ana.
Damn. Okay.
And so when my family finds themselves in Santa Ana, they're in the same neighborhood that my grandparents are raising my mom.
Yeah.
And so that's how my parents meet. But my story begins in the summer of 1992 in Artesia Pilar, where gang violence is at its heights. Police violence is at its heights as well. And we're seeing injustice play out systemically across the city. When I was a kid growing up in Santa Ana was a city that at one point its motto was education first. I grew up during an era of Santa Ana where we were hyper-criminalized. We started to see youth programs slowly be defunded, and we also saw the hyper-criminalization of youth going from the school to prison pipeline. There were more opportunities for kids to be suspended, for kids to be expelled. There was a lack of counselors and a lack of mental health support for students. And what that created was a pathway for students to get incarcerated at a young age, and then that revolving door of recidivism, where you go from juvenile hall to jail to maybe being on probation or parole, and there's violations, and now you have somebody who's in and out of that system for the rest of their life. My family were victims of that state carceral system. My father was impacted by it, my uncles on both sides of my family. So my route was going to be very different. I attribute that to my older brother, Michael Hernandez, because he got me into music. My brother was into Tupac Shakur at a young age. I mean, we had ghetto records in Santa Ana on Bristol and Civic Center. So we'd go to the record store, walking distance from where we live, and you could get Tupac, Bone Thugs, Cypress Hill, like this music we were listening to as kids. Rage Against the Machine, of course. Yeah. But for us as kids, music, particularly Tupac, songs like Changes, songs like Until the End of Time, Shorty Wanna Be a Thug, right? All those songs resonated with the community that I come from. And I feel that part of why that music resonated with us is because we were seeing those topics play out in front of our eyeballs, in front of our faces. Yeah. And oftentimes you would see in communities like mine in Artesia Pilar, you would see police, not have the most positive of relationships with the community. And music and poetry like, Tupac helped remind us that art provides a safe place for people to express themselves. And eventually that's how my story began, was, growing up in Artesia Pilar. And I think I found my consciousness at a young age through music and art.
Dude, it's powerful because I think a lot of us go through those changes at some point in our lives, and we connect with something. And I feel like early on for me, punk music was one of those things. And punk music, as you know, it's also about societal issues and the systemic injustices that we're facing. So it was a way of being able to find my own identity and at the same time be able to reflect on what's going on around me, right? But one of the things that you had mentioned, right, Chavez Ravine, I see Dodger Stadium every day as I'm driving past here, knowing that there's history here that's, they displaced people, they tore people away from their homes. And to find out that your dad, in this case, his family was affected by this, and as a result, how you end up in Santana. Yeah. It's like, whoa, so right now we're living in these times, right? We're facing these immigration raids that are terrorizing communities, and you're just seeing it play out at this point in our generational lifetime. And you start to think, did things really change, right? Or they were just being masked this whole time?
That's a great point. We're seeing history replay itself for our generation. And our ancestors faced that trauma, that violence, our great-grandparents, right? Yeah. We had Operation Wetback that existed in this country at one point. And that was a term utilized by the U.S. government. And it saw them focus on mass deportations in the early 1900s. Many of those families were families like ours. Yeah. But we're seeing violence play out in the most public display that we could. And I think the difference in what we're seeing today is the violence can be seen from your phone, it can be seen from your window at home, or it can be seen from the perspective of those on the ground at protest. But nonetheless, the violence is all around us. And we are seeing an administration, the Trump administration, exemplify what the federal government's overreach looks like, what state carceral violence looks like. We're seeing state-sanctioned violence at its highest level. And we're seeing people being stripped of their constitutional rights without due process. Racial profiling is one of the things that stands out to me as a resident and as an elected in Santa Ana. How are these ICE agents and these DHS agents, these federal agents who are, for one, masked and not identifying themselves? There's no identification of a badge or a badge number. And in often cases, these individuals don't have judicial warrants. Yet they're racially profiling people based on the skin color, based on their trade. If you're a gardener, you have gardening tools. if you are a construction worker waiting at Home Depot.
Yeah.
They're racially
language
profiling.
as well, yeah.
Language.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you speak Spanish and you're monolingual, you're at risk not only of being deported, but you're also at risk of being killed by the police.
Mhm.
We're also seeing racial profiling increase in predominantly brown communities. Whether it's ICE or the police, our people are under attack.
Yeah, early on, like early June, I mentioned this in the last couple of episodes where my first interaction that I was face-to-face with these agents attacking the community was in Paramount. But that was my first time that I got first-hand experience into what that chaos looks like. And since then, I had made it a point to highlight the protests that were happening up around Southeast LA, whether it was Maywood, Bell, Southgate, Linwood, like all these little towns activated after this attack on the communities. But I think one thing I noticed out of that was just the immediate reaction to this by the community members to come together and help each other out. And through that, we've started to see some shifts in policies that are helping protect communities.
That's huge. And I think that what we're learning is we have always been our first responders in our own communities. We have, by nature, as brown people, have had to look out for not only our children and our families and our primos and our tias and tios, right? But that extended family includes your neighbors and the community you live in.
Yeah.
And that is something that only, we as Chicanos or multi-generational Latinos or first-generation Latinos know what that is like. Because when you live in a community that's under attack, you form a relationship of solidarity, trust, and you build with your neighbors. What we saw in the case of Paramount, and this is why it was so important to Santa Ana, was when the Paramount ICE raids were happening and they raided a Home Depot. What we saw was American citizens being detained by ICE on that day. And how Santa Ana intersects with this beautiful county of LA is in a very tragic way. People who were detained by ICE in the city of Paramount were not able to be taken to LA ICE facilities because they were at capacity. So those ICE agents drove from Paramount to Santa Ana on June 7th.
What?
It was a Saturday. They brought them to a civic center building, a federal building, next to City Hall. That day, my office received a number of calls from individuals saying that they were concerned their loved one was in Santa Ana and that they were detained by ICE in Paramount. So I met up with an individual and I worked alongside a community leader named Ray Diaz, a youth leader from Santa Ana who's a parks commissioner and a graduate from UC Santa Cruz. He and I met at City Hall, and we ended up going to the federal building, and we found two individuals, a sibling and a boyfriend to a young lady who was detained by ICE. She was in her early 20s. She's a citizen. Her and her sister were both detained in Paramount. They were both citizens. Eventually, their father came to Santa Ana the same day. And over hours, we attempted to get ICE to give us information on if their loved one can be confirmed to have been detained in that. And we wanted to confirm their location was at Civic Center. How the family knew was the ICE agents detained these two young ladies in Paramount. What they were not aware of was that their cell phones had locations. And so you had a concerned father and a boyfriend who rightfully so fought for their loved ones. My office was there to back them up on June 7th when those Paramount raids happened.
Crazy, yeah.
We were successful in identifying them. Later that night, what we found was that when ICE detains U.S. citizens, they hand them over to Border Patrol, or they'll hand them over to an agency that will then look to prosecute you. And in this case, they were arraigned on June 9th in Santa Ana, which we all know as the day where we saw mass protests happening across California. That day where these two American citizens were being arraigned by the feds, saw protests break out in large numbers in Santa Ana. June 9th of 2025 We saw a number of members of our community be detained by ICE without due process. We saw people being grabbed at bus stops and thrown to the ground as they were waiting. And Santa Ana was one of the cities, along with LA, that the Trump administration targeted. We responded the way that Santa Ana does, and we showed up and peacefully demonstrated. Residents of our city came together at the Civic Center, and they peacefully protested, and they challenged the federal government's overreach. As a result, within the first couple hours of this protest, Santa Ana Police Department and ICE worked together to brutalize the residents who were protesting.
Yeah.
The tactics that the police used, I want to rephrase it. Yeah. The police are the first line of defense for ICE. Police may not be doing immigration work, but they will happily shoot at protesters protesting ICE. Yeah. So let's set the record straight. Cops may not arrest you for being an immigrant, but they will brutalize you for advocating for immigrants. The police are following their commander-in-chief as well, Donald Trump. Most of the police who are working in predominantly brown cities are MAGA supporters, far-right Republicans, and I would also go as far as saying that there's an issue of systemic racism in our police departments. This couldn't be further exemplified by June 9th, 2025 in Santa Ana, where they fired tear gas, chemical agents, they fired rubber bullets, they fired 40-millimeter beanbags at the public without any regard for their safety, without any regard for the public, without any regard for whether these people were there with their children or whether they were elderly or whether they were able-bodied or not. They were being shot at with tear gas, and as you dispersed away from the tear gas, they would shoot you in your back. To this day, the police department of Santa Ana has not filed with the state of California their use of militarized equipment. Under the state of California, any department that utilizes militarized equipment is to provide a report within 30 days to the Department of Justice. Santa Ana has not. I share this with you because Santa Ana Police Department received militarized equipment that was subsequently used on the protesters, not by accident. It was voted on by the Santa Ana City Council in the month of May of 2022. Voted on by David Peñalosa, Thai Viet Van, Councilmember Jetsi Lopez, and former Councilmember Nelida Mendoza. They gave the very equipment to the public that subsequently was used to brutalize them when they peacefully protest. And that day saw nearly 1,000 people be brutalized by our police department and ICE. The protest eventually continued for several days and weeks in Santa Ana until we eventually saw a case that made national news. Narciso Barranco from Santa Ana, a gardener who lived in our city for 3 decades, who is a parent, a husband, and a member of our community, and a business owner. He's had a contract with IHOP for a number of years. He was working his landscape job on the corner. ICE approached him without a warrant, and in fear of his life, of seeing masked men with guns without any identification or a warrant chasing after him, he did what any person of color would do, and that is run to ensure that your life is safe.
Right.
If you see masked men running at you without warrants, without identification and guns, and they're chasing you because you're brown, you're not on probation or parole, you don't have to respond to these people. You're going to fight for your life. And he fled. He ran out of fear for his life.
Of course.
Eventually we saw ICE agents, over 5 ICE agents, hold him down, beat him with their fists, their knees, and batons, shoved him in a vehicle, and then shortly after then, the world learned that Narciso Barranco has 3 veteran children. All 3 of his children serve in the military. 1 is a veteran, 2 are currently serving. This man came from Mexico to Santana to give his family a better life, and not only 1, but all three of his children sacrificed their freedom for this country. And they treat their father as if he didn't birth American heroes with his wife. And that is the story of our people in this country today. A telltale example of how this country will throw our best away is the case of Narciso Barranco. What I'm proud of is his son Alejandro Barranco standing up and fighting for his father. He was able to advocate for due process for his father. His father recently bailed and is now back at home. But he does have a hearing in the month of August, and we're going to be standing in his corner. We're going to provide court support, and we're going to advocate for his freedom.
And I mean, to make sure that I understand too, I think they're saying that he was violent, that he used a weed whacker to apparently attack these agents.
Precisely. What we're seeing in these cases, and I'm glad you brought this up, is in the events that ICE agents or federal agents detain someone without due process, and you don't have a criminal record, you've never been arrested, you're not on probation or parole, what we then see is fabricated charges by the feds, where if they can't get you on any past charges because there are none, they will say that you fled police, that you were getting in the way of a federal investigation, or in his case, they're saying that the weed whacker that he was using for his work, clearly as evidenced in the video of him being beat, it's not within arm's reach. But because of the fact that he had his work gear on him, the officers are saying that they were assaulted by him. There's no evidence demonstrating that they were assaulted. On the contrary, he was running away from them after they pepper sprayed him. Without any contact, they pepper sprayed this man while he was working. And that's what led him to flee. And that's what's most concerning, is that somebody who is clear as day is a victim of the federal government's overreach and brutality can then be placed on charges of assault on an officer. When we see the brutality, coming from them, it's as if this country is telling us that we're not intelligent enough to see what's happening, on the screens of our phone. And we're going to stand up against this injustice, and I do believe we may be looking at a second civil rights movement.
I agree. I highly agree with you. And I think it's important to note that, because after every big major shift in policy in terms of how, they view migrants, we talked about earlier about Operation Wetback and the Bracero program. And it's, again, this pattern of when they need it, they'll open the gates. When they don't, they'll forcibly kick you out of here. And again, that's a pattern that we're seeing currently happening now, right? And then on top of that, when you start seeing like these cases where people are just being snatched up, it's like, how do you not expect them to react on their human responses?
It's fight or flight.
Exactly. Like, there's times where I'm walking and then a dog comes out and kind of jumps at me, and I kind of panic, and I like, oh damn, like, what was that?
Imagine 5 of them.
Exactly, dude. 5 of them, and now imagine like these dudes coming up to you, right? Like you said, unidentified, just coming at you with guns. Of course, you're gonna feel a certain way. You're gonna act like fight or flight. It's a natural response for us humans. And then just the fact, again, that they're trying to slap these charges on you for anything, like, it really frustrates me, because one, you want to be there to help these individuals being taken, to document, but at the same time, they're trying to make it so hard for you to be there. For the very same reason that they don't want you to keep spreading the reality of what's going on.
That's true. And I think that's why I'm so proud of Alejandro, his son. His son is a veteran who bravely served this country. Although I may not agree with America's wars, I respect our soldiers. I respect those who are fighting for our country. Because in the case of Alejandro Barranco, this hero not only served his country honorably, he's still serving it today by challenging his government. By challenging his government to treat his father as a human being, as a person who is part of America's history, as a person who's contributing towards creating American heroes and supporting that dream. He deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. Alejandro Barranco's fight helped bring Santa Ana to national news. It helped bring his story of his father to the Presidenta in Mexico, who then talked about the injustice of Narciso Barranco being an American citizen without papers, because in theory, he is a citizen of both of these beautiful countries, right? America and Mexico. His roots began in Mexico, but his story belongs to America now. Mm-hmm. And his children are clear examples of that. But if it wasn't for his son standing up, I think that our country would be in a different place. The story of Narciso brought millions of migrants together, refugees and people of color, to challenge the injustice. We're seeing people's First Amendment right, Fourth Amendment right, Fifth Amendment right, and our 10th Amendment rights, our rights as a state, being violated by the president. We're seeing ICE come into our cities where they are utilizing a hybrid model of doing these ICE raids and sweeps, where you have collaboration between ICE, Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and to some extent, I'm also worried about the fact that these bounty hunters are working with these ICE agents. I think more of these agents are bounty hunters than they are ICE agents. I think that their operations, from what we're seeing in communities like ours, is that there are vans coming into our communities. There may be one ICE agent in that van, and the majority of the others are bounty hunters. I'm also very worried about where the people who were a part of the insurrection on January 6th.
Where are they?
How many of those people are working for ICE? Mm-hmm. Because the same people who raided the Capitol, who raided, a place of government, and it resulted in a cop getting killed. It resulted in people being trampled on. It resulted in chaos. And it also resulted in somebody that was a part of the insurrection being killed by law enforcement. The same people that went and did that to their government were then pardoned by our president. This is the very reason why the violence is escalating. We have a president who is emboldening people who think they have the right to kill protesters, in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. And they are emboldening people who also think that if they want to take this country back, that they can, break into a governmental institution, trample, people with dissenting opinions and kill cops. That's who January 6th insurrectionists, that's what they represent.
Yeah.
Those are the people Trump pardons. I'm very worried about where are some of those insurrectionists. Are they working for ICE? Are these some of the people who are stripping our residents of their constitutional rights and violating their First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights? Because I'm very concerned about the racial profiling, and I think clear as day, this is an example of them attacking brown people.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up this point that I came across a couple of days ago in regards to some of the language that mainstream media likes to use just to kind of get points across, is just labeling these migrants of their value that they bring to society through their labor. And I think one big part that gets erased in that is just that I personally don't see why we continue this conversation of trying to value people's worth based on what they provide to this capitalist society, rather than their value as humans, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it also erases everything else that our gente does, right? Council city members, we have lawyers, we have doctors, a variety of different positions. And I think it's important that we need to highlight that and take that narrative back, because we're more than that, and at the same time, we need to start stepping up and valuing people for their actual worth as members of their society rather than members of that system.
I agree. And what that is that's code. That's code for white supremacy.
Yeah.
Many of our own Latino people fall victim to that. And it's indoctrination. I think that that's part of why so many people think that the value of who we are is our work. Mm-hmm. Our work's great. There's a reason why nobody questions who made pyramids in Mexico. Right? Like, that's a compliment. That's a compliment. But at the same time, people also utilize that talking point of, well, who's going to do these jobs? Or more than these jobs.
Yeah.
I'll remind people right now that in Santana, when our country was segregated and students of color had to go to, black-only schools. White children had white-only schools, and the Mexicans were left out. Santana had Mexican-only schools at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Artesia Pilar, which was a predominantly brown and black neighborhood. But there was a neighborhood in my city called Logan. And I want to shout out Sam Romero and Chepa Andrade and the Andrade family. But Logan was one of the first places where Mexicans can own land in Santa Ana. It also had a Mexican-only school that Miss Chepa Andrade and her family were able to attend. And this Mexican-only school was an example of many examples for us in Santa Ana of Mexican-only schools. I live in a neighborhood where we had Fremont Elementary. Back in the days, it was located on Calle Ocho and Calle Artesia. That was a Mexican-only school. In the 1940s, the Mendez family worked alongside the Ramirez family, the Palomino family, and a Santana family, the Guzman family. Virginia and William Guzman were residents of the city of Santana that lived in Artesia Pilar in the 40s. The families that I just listed filed a class action lawsuit that was known as Mendez versus Westminster. These Mexican families challenged our local school districts and were successful in desegregating our schools. These were migrant families. They set a precedent that eventually helped open the doors for Brown versus Board of Education, which ended, segregation of students.
Yeah.
And they also set a precedent for the civil rights movement because it was Mexican families working with lawyers like Thurgood Marshall, who eventually fought for the civil rights movement, was the first black Supreme Court judge we had. But the story of challenging a government that does not see us as human is one that is as old as our history. And we were triumphant. When you look at, we talked about the Chicano Moratorium, August 29th, 1970, Ruben Salazar, a journalist, was killed by Sheriff Deputy Thomas Wilson, shot in the head with a tear gas canister. And he was a Santa Ana resident at the time of his death. He was raising his family in Santa Ana. And he was the first Mexican journalist with the LA Times. And he was also a voice for what we now know as Univision. Ruben Salazar was a pioneer and a voice for us. Fast forward, you look at where we're at today. The attack has historically been on black and brown communities, whether it's the Black Panthers and the Brown Berets, whether it's COINTEL pro strategies to dismantle movements that are empowering, disenfranchised, marginalized groups of people. There is always going to be an attack on our organization and our ability to sustain, the neighborhoods that we come from. The ways that we're able to sustain that autonomy and to ensure we're not hyper-policed is we have to start valuing, our relationships with each other. And we got to do it beyond our cities and our county lines. Meaning, what happens to you affects me. What happens to your grandma affects my grandma.
Yeah.
What happens to your mom affects my mom. And we're seeing that, and I believe it's uniting our people who are impacted across the country. There are Latinos who voted for Trump, and we don't condone that. We don't co-sign it. We're ashamed of those who did, because the violence and the blood is on your hand now. We're seeing Latinos move away from Trump. We're seeing people step away from these violent policies. And I think there's an awakening in the brown community and in the Southeast Asian community. I believe that conservative parts of Latino communities are starting to shift because, as Corky Gonzalez shared, a Chicano leader from Colorado, Corky Gonzalez talked about, and he organized the first Chicano Youth Summit back in the 60s. Corky Gonzalez talked about the quickest way to learn is to be beat over the head by a policeman's baton. And he says the police help organize us. They either beat us into submission or they beat us into activity. And we're going to get active.
Damn, that's powerful, dude.
So I want to remind people that when they tell us we're simply workers, we're not just that. We're the people who built this country. And in California, you're never going to get rid of us. The reason why California is different than any other state is because we're too close to home here. My home is in Mexico and it's in California. You can't get rid of our stories here.
Right.
And that's what this country is going to learn. And I believe the second civil rights movement that is amongst us will be led by black and brown people. And it'll be our right to remain and our right for them to not kill us. Deportation is the next step at the modern day lynching.
Mm-hmm.
If it's that easy, then I call the modern day lynching police shootings. Officer involved shootings are the modern day public lynchings. It is the only example in our country today where a public servant can decide to be your judge, jury, and executioner. If we're looking at the parallel of violence, imagine this. Imagine if ICE can pick up your loved one without knowing their name, without having a warrant. Imagine them being able to take your loved one and put them in a cell for a month. That's happening today.
Yeah.
Now imagine this. Imagine if your police department wants to say that you're a threat and that you may have a gun. What is the likelihood of them racially profiling our people if ICE is doing it? They're doing it every day. They actually have been doing it longer than ICE. But the reality is, the modern day lynching, I bring this up, is because not only is ICE brutalizing our people, we're seeing violence against Latinos, brown people, monolingual Spanish speakers, increase in numbers that we've never seen. We're seeing more people be killed by the police today under Trump's administration than we have in recent years. I share this with you because the last lynching to take place in Orange County, in Santa Ana, was a Mexican man named Francisco Torres. And he was lynched very close to our city hall. And this is considered one of the last public lynchings in California history. I can't confirm if it's the last, but in our county of Orange, it was the last lynching. And it happened over a $2 labor dispute. Francisco Torres was a laborer who was short $2 on his check, went to his employer. Eventually, they refused to pay him. He was jailed, and the employer was found deceased. They alleged him of murder without any, evidence of that. They jailed him. Within, days of him being jailed, a mob of 100 white men with masks over their face, with sledgehammers, broke into the jail, broke past police, broke him out of his cell, and hung him, lynched him on a telegraph pole. They then attached a nail with a note into his stomach that said change of venue, because his attorney, Francisco Torres, was demanding a change of venue because he was fearful of his client's life. And I shared that story with you because we're seeing our people be lynched today by the state in the most violent ways they can, whether it's at the hands of police or whether it's at the hands of DHS and ICE. We are learning about migrants dying in captivity. We're learning about migrants who are detained by ICE dying while they're in custody. This is injustice. This is a human rights violation. And I believe that these injustices are going to spark a movement that is going to force change in this country. And we're going to fight for that.
Yeah. And it's crazy because at some point you think you're trying to push something on somebody so much that you forget that people start resisting it. And this is exactly what we're seeing. And it's what we see in every big shift in political climate, right? Like society just changing the way it's of thinking and evolving past this. It has to come with some sort of adversary. What is it?
Adversity.
Adversity. There you go. And it makes you wonder, actually, Bell, California, I went to a city council. I never go to city council meetings, man. It's really rare when I do. And I didn't really start becoming more proactive about it till a couple of years ago. But this past month, I've been going to them pretty consistently just to see what is going on with city policies. And I had gone to the one in Huntington Park and Bell. Huntington Park was a little bit more proactive, trying to figure out solutions to how they can mitigate some of these, I like to call them goons coming in and
They're
taking people.
goons.
They're goons. And they were a lot more proactive. They had the police chief kind of there talking, and then the city attorney as well, going back and forth in what could and couldn't be done, and what is considered obstruction. And it ended up being that they were going to pass some sort of ordinance where HP police were not going to be able to use their resources, or city wasn't going to use resources to help these kidnappings happen, right? I went to Bell, and Bell has a pretty big police department as well. The mayor's answer at that point was very discouraging, because all he said was like, well, we can't do anything against federal police. Like, we just kind of have to let it happen and just respect our police officers. You know, they're here for you guys. And it seemed like a lazy, half-assed response.
It is.
To people who are obviously terrorized and scared of doing anything in their communities. And it just felt like, you don't care.
The public should look up that mayor's financial sheets as to who's donating to his campaign, or his or her campaign. I can guarantee you, if you have an elected who is reluctant to have their police department, engage in best practices to identify officers who are in your city masked with guns and without warrants, I believe that the police department has a responsibility to identify those individuals. I would argue that if you have elected officials who don't agree with that, they're more than likely going to be funded by that local police union. A lot of police departments are reluctant to work with their local cities to identify agents. And the reason why, I believe, is two-pronged. I believe that the reason why they don't want to is because they support the ICE raids. I really do believe the majority of the police in Santa Ana, I'll be on the record, do not give a fuck about Santa Ana residents. The majority of Santa Ana cops in Santa Ana do not care about our rights being violated. Number two, I think that cops are also worried that they may be arrested. That's a real threat too.
Real quick, just to interrupt there, that was one of the things that the city of Bell said. It goes like, don't you guys think about our officers? Like, they can get taken too. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. But I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's like, where's your morality in that? And I started thinking, like, the way he was insinuating the conversation was saying that if they deemed it necessary to take these actions to get their mission accomplished, right? Like these goons, then they can get away with anything, right? Like at what point, let's say, this is a hypothetical thing here, but let's just say Trump says, hey, it's okay to waterboard these guys. So if he says it's okay, and these enforcement agents are supposed to follow what's happening, at what point do you stop and say, wait, I can't do this?
Exactly.
So where is that line? Where do we draw that line? At what point are we going to decide upon ourselves, like, that crosses a line there? If you're completely making it normal for these actions to take place.
So, you know what? You're bringing up a really good point. You're talking about the commander-in-chief, the president, right?
Yeah.
That's what they call him. Let's talk about what has happened before the ICE raids. April 28th of 2025, the White House put out an executive order. The name of it, Strengthening and Unleashing America's Law Enforcement to Pursue Criminals and Protect Innocent Civilians. This went over people's heads.
Yeah.
This was a precursor. This executive order I'm going to break down. I'm going to read a couple of lines written by the White House. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1. Purpose and policy. Safe communities rely on the backbone and heroism of a tough and well-equipped police force. My administration is steadfastly committed to empowering state and local law enforcement to firmly place dangerous criminal behavior and protect innocent citizens. When local leaders demonize law enforcement and impose legal and political handcuffs that make aggressively enforcing the law impossible, crime thrives and innocent citizens and small business owners suffer. My administration will therefore establish best practices at state and local level for cities to unleash high-impact local police forces, protect and defend law enforcement's wrongly accused and abused by state and local officials, and surge resources to officers in need. My administration will work to ensure that the law enforcement officers across America focus on ending crime, not pursuing harmful, illegal race and sex-based equity policies. The result will be a law-abiding society in which tenacious law enforcement officers protect innocent. Violations of law are not tolerated, and American communities are safely enjoyed by all citizens again. Number 2 in this executive order, Section 2, legal defense of law enforcement officers. The Attorney General shall take all appropriate action to create a mechanism to provide legal resources and indemnification to law enforcement officers who unjustly incur expenses and liabilities for action taken during the performance of their official duties to enforce the law. Number 3, empowering state and local law enforcement. The Attorney General and other appropriate heads of executive departments and agencies shall take all appropriate action to maximize the use of federal resources to, number 1, provide new best practices to state and local law enforcement to aggressively police communities against all crimes. This executive order was a notice to the public that your rights are about to be violated.
Yeah.
In the face of your rights being violated, I'm going to put millions and billions of dollars into protecting the officers that are going to be sued as a result of violating your rights. Mm-hmm. This executive order was a telltale sign of what was to come. And I hope that people start to really read these executive orders, because this told us what was going to happen.
Yeah, man. I mean, for people listening, you can find this on the actual whitehouse.gov website. And it's interesting because the first couple of months since he came in, there was just a shitload of executive orders being thrown at you, right? So by the time you're reading one, 5 more are coming out. And dude, these are basically what people say too long didn't read things.
Yes.
It's
true.
And on top of that, the language. It's always about language for me, because language can be manipulated to fit anything, right?
Yes.
Who deems what a criminal act? Like, if now they're saying it's criminal to wear masks as protesters, then at that point they're opening the floodgates to labeling you as a criminal, and then they can do whatever they want to you.
Precisely.
And same thing, if they label independent journalism or podcasts talking about this kind of stuff, then I'm a criminal. They can come after me. So at what point, again, do we start setting boundaries as to how far they can go? You know? And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about just the Santa Ana recently joining the lawsuit that was, I guess, brought up maybe about a week ago by a federal judge.
Yes.
Imposing like a temporary restraining order here in some of the counties out in Los Angeles, and including now Santana.
Yes. So where it really begins for us is we're a 40% migrant community. 40% of our residents migrated to Santana. Over 70% of our residents are of Latino descent. The majority of those in the Latino community in Santana is of Mexican descent. We are the largest Mexican community in California per capita.
Damn, okay.
Meaning the diversity of LA is a very diverse Latino community.
Yeah.
Santana is predominantly Mexican. We're proud to have a Salvadorian, Guatemalan, Honduran, Bolivian, Puerto Rican, Cubano community. We're proud to have a large Southeast Asian, Laotian, Cambodian, and we have the second largest Vietnamese community outside of Vietnam.
In Santana?
In Orange County.
Oh, Orange County.
Orange County.
Okay.
Yes. We're a diverse community with over 300,000 residents. We're the 3rd largest city in Orange County, the 13th largest city in California. What really began for us was when we saw the executive order by Donald Trump. My office worked together with Mayor Pro Tem Benjamin Vasquez. I worked with the Harbor Institute. I worked with ACLU. We worked with CARE LA. And we also worked with Via Rise. We built a multiracial coalition that also included Ray Diaz, the youth organizer I mentioned. And we introduced a policy, the first of its kind in California. It was led by the coalition I just shared. We introduced a policy that was going to make any and all ICE notifications publicly available on a publicly available website, cityofsantana.org. I fought for this, and it was because of the journalism of a brave journalist named Ben Camacho. He public records requested all ICE activity in our city, and he identified that the city had over 42 ICE notifications. or we could have informed the public about that presence. Many of these notifications come days in advance, sometimes weeks in advance. So as a policymaker, I worked across the table with Mayor Pro Tem, who's a fantastic leader, and Viet Rise Harbor Institute, CARE LA, and Ray Diaz. And when we were working on this policy, we introduced a 48-hour turnaround on any public records that we receive from ICE and on notifications related to their activities with respects to them not having warrants, that communication should be public. The city council voted against that. Myself and Mayor Pro Tem were the only ones that voted in favor. As a result of us looking to create transparency, we were the only city in California pushing for that ordinance. We were then targeted by the U.S. attorney that was appointed by Donald Trump. I'm not even going to name him because I'm not looking to give power to, far-right extremists.
Yeah.
But this U.S. attorney threatened the city of Santa Ana and threatened not only city employees but electeds that they would potentially arrest us.
Because, like, interfering with their stuff? Yeah, okay.
I still felt that the right thing to do was to release public records. The word public exists in front of records for a reason.
Yeah.
And these were courtesy ICE notifications. This is ICE sending your city a courtesy notice. We're going to be in town. That's information I believe needs to belong to the public, especially if there's no warrants pertaining to that. And ultimately, that was what led us to being targeted by the Trump administration. That's why LA and Santa Ana were ravaged by ICE. Fast forward to where we're at now. We subsequently also fought for more transparency. We fought for what is called the Freedom of Information Act. As a council, we were unanimous in providing a Freedom of Information Act to the Department of Justice and to ICE, requesting any and all contact, communication, information related to ICE enforcement in our city. We haven't received any records yet, to my knowledge. But to take that a step further, when I saw LA suing the U.S. government, I recognized that as the right thing to do. The reason why is amidst this Trump administration that is showing us the federal government's overreach, violation of human rights, violation of, our constitutional rights, violation of our First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights. We're seeing a government that has no regard for the law, no regard for law and order. A president with 40-plus felonies, a president who's openly racist. And in this case, when LA decided to sue, I felt strongly that Santa Ana needed to join those efforts. And here's why. The last line of defense we have today is judges, lawyers, and lawsuits. That's really your last line of defense against Trump.
Yeah.
You can have a rapid response to the ICE raids. We can do immigration defense. We can do mutual aid. We can do peaceful protesting. We can sign petitions. We can run for election. We can organize communities. But at some point, we also have to be on the offense. The last line of defense and offense today, because I don't think we'll have courts until the end of 2026. I think this corrupt president and his administration are going to hold off on being held accountable. I think they're going to control the Supreme Court until the end of 2026 when there's an election that forces change. And I think that ultimately the last line of defense that we had as a city was to sue. And I believe that aligning ourselves with LA County, the city of LA, and 9 other cities will create a ripple effect across California and the country, where I think we're going to see cities in large numbers with similar demographics to ours start to sue the U.S. government. And I'm proud as a council member to have worked with Mayor Pro Tem Benjamin Vasquez on supporting transparency and on holding the U.S. government accountable for their crimes.
Yeah. My biggest question is, with this influence, though, like how much power does local government really have in all of this?
That's a good question. Local government is going to have its fair share of challenges. The reason why those challenges are going to be unique is because the challenges are unique to specific communities. And it's unique to the community based on the fact that if you have, for instance, if you have what is called a charter, like the city of Santa Ana, where we are a form of government that is city manager form of government, it means that the mayor and electeds like myself represent one vote. And that the way of creating change on a ballot in terms of local law can only happen by way of our voters in Santa Ana. That gives Santa Ana as a city more local control. That's why we're able to advocate for policies like rent control. We're able to enshrine it as part of the city's charter so that no politician, moving forward can say, we're going to make changes here. If you want to make changes, the voters decide. Cities like LA are what are considered a mayor-strong form of city, where the mayor has more executive authority to fire departmental heads, to make budget recommendations, that may be out of the scope of power that our mayor has, or mayors in cities like ours. So the shift is two different forms of government. You have state control. Cities like LA have to make policies in accordance with state law. And then cities that are city manager charters form of government, like my city, we were the founders of Orange County. The city of Santa Ana was the first city in the county that gave us very unique powers, where we were able to decide that our voters make the local laws. So that's why in my city of Santa Ana, I introduced non-citizen voting on the ballot in 2024. I worked on it in 2022. Over 2 years, I worked with Santa Ana Families for Fair Elections, comprised of refugees and immigrants. And we worked together over 2 years to study, the over 30 cities that have non-citizen voting. We introduced a ballot measure where our voters were able to decide if they wanted to enshrine restoring voting rights to non-citizens, or if they wanted to keep things as is. Over 40% of voters voted in favor of extending voting rights to non-citizens, but the majority of our voters voted no. It was over 50,000 residents who voted against the issue. But this democratic approach to this conversation and to public policy was one that I introduced because in preparation of Donald Trump, I felt that this democratic question should be posed to the voters, and we did. The reason why we're able to do that is because although non-citizen voting is not allowed at the federal level, because we're a charter city, if the voters vote in favor of non-citizen voting, it becomes local law. And that's how we're able, as a charter city, to be able to govern very differently. So it's important that the members of the public know that some cities have limitations based on the fact that they have to abide by state law. Cities like Santa Ana, who are older and have a charter, that charter revolves around the voter. So, for instance, when I ran for office in 2020, I ran for city council against a sheriff. His name was Juan Villegas. I was the only candidate running on rent control. At the time, my city didn't have it. I ran on rent control and supported the work of Tenants United from Santa Ana. They're a fantastic organization that did good on the groundwork for years, educating the public about the importance of rent control. When we created the rent control ordinance in Santa Ana, we worked across the table. I fought to include language that would protect students up to the age of 21 who are enrolled in school so that they can't be evicted during a school year. It was challenged legally by the California Apartment Association. They sued us, the city of Santa Ana. They challenged the legality of rent control because the state of California's rent cap was at 10%. Santa Ana's rent cap's at 3%.
Damn.
Right? So check this out. They sued us. So we did what what a democratic, transparent government would do. We let the voters decide. We put it on the ballot in 2024, and it passed.
Damn.
Throw out their lawsuit. Because it's local law. The ordinance was what we created as politicians, as electeds. But the second our voters vote yes on it, it makes it part of the city's charter, which means the only way to remove rent control is by way of voter.
So 3%.
Yes. So even if a council in 10 years goes, I want to increase it to 5%, the voters have to decide. Only the voters can decide. That's democracy. But as a policymaker, That's why I share these examples, is because now more than ever, we need to learn about our local government.
Exactly.
We don't have any control at the federal level. Look at Congress. These Latinos are selling us out. These are the same Latinos who are saying ICE out of our cities, but they're voting to not impeach Trump.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have the same people who are saying, stop brutalizing our families and children, but they're funding the wars and the occupation in Gaza.
Yeah.
Do you see the dichotomy of that? Right? And the shift in government is we need to get these Latinos out of office who are selling our people out.
Yeah.
That is who's most dangerous to us today. It's white supremacists have always been dangerous to our existence. You look at the erasure of Native American people. You look at the erasure of Mesoamerican stories. You look at the erasure of indigenous people's history here in LA. You look at Trump calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, right? Like, these examples are real. But here's what we need. We need to say no to the Latino sellout politicians. Mm-hmm. Those, just because they look like us, they talk like us, and they come from our communities, not all skin folk is kinfolk. There's Latinos who sit in office at the congressional level, who are selling our people out, who are voting in line with Republicans on the big, beautiful bill, mm-hmm. who are voting in line to cut your mama's Medi-Cal, who are voting in line to cut your neighbor's EBT benefits, who are voting in line with the Laken-Riley Act, which allows for immigrants to be detained without probable cause. These are the same people that are calling themselves Democrats and people that are representative of us. I say not.
No.
They don't represent us. They represent the colonizers. They represent the police. They represent the violence of the state, the violence of the feds. We need to start denouncing the Latino politicians who are selling us out. There are far too many people in power today who are fearful of doing what's right. And that's why I ran for office. Mm-hmm. I ran for office because I saw a Latino sheriff who thought that police violence, at the highest level, isn't worth talking about. And I disagreed with that, because my worry was, what happens when it's our family? We saw George Floyd died, and there was a lot of Latinos at that time who thought they had privilege, and this is a black issue. It's not.
Right.
State-sanctioned violence affects all of us. When George Floyd died, that was the telltale sign for us to get it together. In Santa Ana, the climate being one that was very divided. People were upset about George Floyd's death, and they wanted to protest.
Yeah.
The divide was this: how come so few of our brown spaces don't occupy black leadership? How often are we building rainbow coalitions that build outside of our own communities and our impacts?
Yeah.
And so I saw the parallel between kids in cages and the violence at the border and the violence of kneeling on a black man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That parallel was that we're not safe. If they can put a child in a cage at the border and separate them from their mother, what makes you think they're not going to kill us next?
Yeah.
On the 1-year anniversary, I flew out to Minneapolis, and I met with his sister, Bridget Floyd. And I just wanted to send a message of solidarity with her. I spent a week in Minneapolis to stand in solidarity with the people and to also learn about the people's movements, because I needed to make sure that we were representing ourselves right in Santa Ana. And when I spent that week out there, I learned a lot. I saw that it wasn't Democrats, it wasn't nonprofits, and it wasn't activists that held down George Floyd Square. It was impacted people. Mm-hmm. I saw it firsthand. That was the longest autonomous zone in America's history, where the government did not have control over that square.
Yeah.
And when I was advocating for George Floyd in Santa Ana, I was running against a sheriff at the time. I brought back Daniel Michael Lynham, the founder of Santa Ana's Black Panther Party, who was wrongfully accused of a murder of a Santa Ana cop. Every public servant should make it home. But when a man is unjustly charged for a murder he did not do, there are multiple victims. And in this case of George Floyd dying, I looked to the black history of my city. and I reached out to Daniel Michaelainen, a man who was jailed for 31 days, in prison for 31 days, for the murder of a cop, and he was innocent. That man is a mentor to me, who lived and grew up in my neighborhood I was raised in. Daniel Michaelainen, after 31 days, was exonerated, and all the charges were dropped. When I was running for office, we organized a protest on Juneteenth in Santana, and he was one of the leaders of it. I worked with Dwayne Shipp, whose mother started the Black History Parade 45 years ago in Santa Ana. I worked with formerly incarcerated people from the community who were from the Black community to ensure that all of the perspectives of my city, we stood shoulder to shoulder with those. When I was advocating for justice alongside my neighbors in Santa Ana, we were confronted by police in that fight for justice. And that's when I started to see my police department in Santa Ana, their reluctancy to people power and the building of neighbors working across the table. When I eventually was elected into office in 2020, as I shared, I went to George Floyd's annual memorial, the 1 year, met with Bridget. Several months after, September 28th of 2021, I then saw my loved one, Brandon Lopez, murdered at the hands of Anaheim Police Department in the city of Santa Ana. He was shot 22 times by 4 killer cops. Yeah. Paul Delgado, Catalin Panav, Brett Heitman, and Kenneth Weber. Some of these officers had several shootings under their records prior to killing my cousin Brandon. Paul Delgado, Catalin Panav had a total of 3 officer-involved shootings, with Brandon being the third.
Yeah.
My family on that day was there when he was killed. I was present. We, for hours, spent hours, trying to save my cousin's life, pleading with police that he was unarmed, that he was having a mental health crisis. And ultimately, what resulted was a Santa Ana police officer lied and said he had a gun. And it resulted in Anaheim PD shooting him 22 times. Brandon was a father to 4 beautiful children. He was a tattoo artist. He was a Chicano. He was a Santanero. Somebody who loved music, a beautiful smile. And he was the primo that got my brother and I into Tupac, hip hop, a lot of the things that we embrace, skateboarding. He was my older cousin, and may he rest in peace. That changed me forever. And so when I shared earlier about Corky Gonzalez, the police helped organize us.
Yeah.
They made these families. They are creating, trauma in communities that is forcing us to come together and resist, that is forcing us to revolt, forcing us to organize. My family ended up challenging Anaheim in a settlement, and they were represented by the Ogalipo, Santa Ana native Vicky Sarmiento, may she rest in peace, and DeWitt Lacey. And they held Anaheim legally responsible, and it saw my family being able to get a settlement for their children, and we saw a police chief from Anaheim retire. We also saw a Santa Ana police chief retire within a month from that. So 2 police chiefs retiring within less than 45 days after we held Anaheim legally responsible. Fast forward to what we're seeing today with the ICE raids. I've had a tumultuous number of years of battling my own police department because of my fight for justice, which is why the public saw national examples of my leadership to challenge ICE. What primed me for this fight was police injustice. Santa Ana is the first city in Orange County to become a sanctuary city. I was a part of that fight as a community member. I never thought I would run for city council because, like most people, I am a part of the impacted community. Never saw myself represented in local government, which is why I began to challenge it. When Donald Trump was elected, I was a part of the community's efforts to demand that the city become a sanctuary city. I was a part of the community's effort to demand that the city end their ICE contract. We got rid of our ICE contract before 2019. I was a part of the city's Invest in Youth campaign, where we pushed for the city to balance their budget in favor of youth investment and equity instead of hypercriminalization of young people. And that was a part of the council when I got on that created rent control, that created police oversight and accountability, that created affordable housing, that saw my office invest $32 million in the Santana Public Library, that saw me build 5 additional park spaces in my city. And that's ultimately why when these ICE raids happened, I knew that the role of us in local government meant that we needed to exemplify what too was possible at the local level, meaning we need representatives who are going to be proactive in protecting our migrant community, because that's who makes up our city. We needed electeds who are not going to be afraid of the government's threats and their federal overreach. We need electeds who are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with us when our communities are being brutalized. If you're seeing it from the distance of your phone, or if you're at a protest and you're recording selfie videos while people are getting shot at, then go home. I shared that with you because politicians in my city were recording selfie videos while people were being shot at, myself included, by my own police department. There are people playing politics with their lives while they're endangered. There are people campaigning today while our people are in crisis. This is a time where local government needs to show us who they are. The feds are showing us who they are, and their white supremacist agenda has been fully exposed. They're using words like, we have 65,000 alligators who are ready to eat. They're talking about this at Alligator Alcatraz. They're telling you, if you're not in our encampments, then we have animals that are willing to eat you. And each of them are ready to eat. This is ideology that was used during Jim Crow, during slavery and racial segregation. We're seeing that same violence and racism pop its head out in our communities now, more than we ever have. And I would argue that it's because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's emboldening people to just show their true colors, just because we're about at that time right now.
Yes.
But I have 2 questions for you. First and foremost, thank you for giving me this new perspective of what is possible when there's individuals who can hold up a light in this darkness. Because I think that's one of the things that is easy to get lost in, this trauma and this fear. If you succumb to it, it paralyzes you. But I think when you're able to hear them out, people who are on the ground and actually doing the work, you're able to see this new perspective that although we have these negative emotions coming right now, we are capable of turning this around and seeing the action that we can take, right? And I think that's a healthy part of going through your emotions, going through that fear, that anger, and then turning that anger into action, right? And then that action becomes the energy that you said sets you in the trajectory to get to where you are, as hard as it was, right? And for sure, I'm so sorry for your loss. And it's disgusting that there's these injustices that law enforcement and that these institutions continue to get away with. And I think, like, going back to what you mentioned about a second coming of civil rights movement, I think that this is what it's building up to. And unfortunate as it may sound, is that we may have to go through some tougher times before we get to the point of that. And I think that I can speak on that in life in general. Sometimes life comes at you hard, but there's always that light at the end of the tunnel, right? Without sounding too cheesy. Like, there's always that peak. There's those valleys. So right now we may be down there, but it's only a matter of time before we rise up and we become more unified. We have more strength in the collectiveness that we have already. And again, I sense that at least in our lifetime, I think we're going to see that movement happen.
I agree. And I'm glad you said that, because I think that's what's possible when we stay in the fight.
Yeah.
We have to look at it like this. I'm going to use battle terms, right? There are many battles in a war. We just went through a couple of battles that I would argue we came out on top of.
Yeah.
Right? Day 1 was June 7th for them swinging at us. We're still swinging.
Yeah. Every day.
We're still swinging. And look at it like this. This is a championship fight. I'll use another fight term, right? We're probably in the second round, maybe first round right now. There's about 10 more rounds ahead of us. It's a 12-round fight, right? But the good thing about us is we have decades of training camps.
Yeah.
We have decades of preparation, and we have the results to speak to it. Let's talk about what this country was founded on. White supremacy. Who desegregated their schools? We did. And I could say Santana did that first before anyone else.
Yeah.
When we talk about the civil rights movement, look what the black community created. Look at the ripple effect of change that inspired us to create the Brown Berets, to start the East LA school walkouts, to start the Chicano Moratorium, for Carlos Montes and Dr. David Sanchez to start the Brown Berets. Our people got to action.
Mm-hmm.
They became active. This battle has been long in the making, and it's a battle for native land. We're native people, and we're indigenous to both of the lands, California and Mexico, Texas, Colorado. These are our homes. The issue about that this country struggles with our people is that our home is beyond these borders. You can't erase our stories.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the only groups of people where we're native to this land. Our stories have been here as long as the roots existed. And that's where we're seeing America struggle with us. And I think that that's what's going to really be an exemplary story of who we are tomorrow, is we're not going to go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to leave the land. This isn't going to be another case of the Chavez Ravine, where we're ran out. Contrary to that, I would argue we're running them out. And I know that we are going to live in a day and age where Latinos, Chicanos, and Mexicanos make up the majority in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we have the power in California that should this country continue to wage war on our people, I would argue that California is in a very strong position given the amount of money that we contribute to the feds and to the local economy, that we are one of those states that could very much, challenge this government and force them to do what's right. I don't think that there are too many states with the power that we have to be able to, challenge this government and to force them to get it right.
Right. Yeah, we have the leverage. Yeah.
We do.
But
California's the place.
California's the place. We're going to start wrapping that up, but it's definitely empowering to have voices such as yours on the show. I think it's important that we continue having these conversations, unpacking what we're feeling, because early on, man, I was feeling stressed out. I'm sure everybody was, right? We had no idea what was going on. And through these conversations, although we see the administration fighting harder to kind of keep going at this, we're also finding our balance and our footing with each of these interactions, and we're adapting to this, and we're trying to make solutions that are actually going to be worthwhile in the long run to our communities. And I think that is the most empowering thing. And out of all of this, out of all the fear, I think we got to focus on that unity that we're seeing, because if you haven't been out to a protest, if you haven't been out to like a gathering, even if it's not our quotes protest, just gathering with other people who are feeling the same way about what's going on, I think you should make your way out to it. Because one, you're going to meet new faces. And just real quick, I went to South Lake Park in Huntington Park the other day, and they were having like this gathering, but they were all there for this one reason, and it was to know their community. And I think that's important, because for so many years I've passed through my town or my streets, I didn't say hi. I wasn't the type of person to start these conversations. But now I felt that inclination to be like, let me get to know these people.
Mm-hmm.
Buenas tardes. Hola. Like, even if it's not deep conversation, we need to know that we're there for each other and we see each other.
Facts. I got to shout you out for that.
Man.
Because look at, like, as simple as that sounds, that's actually very radical. Because you're literally forcing yourself to rethink how you interact in your community.
Yeah.
You're rewiring your brain to say, I need to know who my neighbors are because I'm conscious of having to keep them safe.
Yeah.
That's actually very beautiful. That's a good problem to have. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I see you and I recognize your humanity. I should get to know this person.
Yeah.
That's the future. I think that's one of the most powerful things we can do today. Is it really your neighborhood if you don't say hi to the doña that's crossing the street?
Right, yeah.
Is it really your neighborhood if you don't know your local paletero? Is it really your neighborhood if you don't know the family that lives next door to you? Right? That's how we can have a response. If you don't go to protests, if you don't go to vigils, if you don't organize, then at least get to know your neighbors.
Yeah.
Because God forbid a neighbor gets detained by ICE, you can help connect the dots to a rapid response network or to immigration defenders. We can then begin processes to defend our neighbors. But I think that that's huge, and you're absolutely right. And one of the last things I just want to share is, in light of all this violence, when I was elected in 2020, I fought to create August as Chicano Heritage Month, making us the first city in the country to declare August Chicano Heritage Month. I was successful in doing so in 2022. The school district, Santana Unified School District, subsequently then declared August Chicano Heritage Month. The second city in the country to declare August Chicano Heritage Month was the city of Española, New Mexico. Anaheim was the third city.
Nice.
And fourth was United States Congress declared August Chicano Heritage Month in 2023.
Yeah.
And so next month is Chicano Heritage Month. This is a month where we are going to resist. This is a month where we are going to demonstrate. This is a month where we're going to protest and we're going to speak up. The call to action that I have for our communities is get to know your local rapid response network. In Santa Ana, we have a number of organizations doing work. Orange County Rapid Response Network, Viet Rise, Harbor Institute, CARE LA. These are all organizations that are helping people who are detained by ICE. Immigration Defenders is a partner we have in our city. We're the only city in Orange County that has $300,000 in immigration defense. Our city pays to defend people who are detained by ICE. We are contracted with Immigration Defenders. I want to share this information with the public so that those who listen know what resources exist locally for us. And during Chicano Heritage Month, we will have the Chicano Heritage Festival at Centennial Park, August 24th. It's a Sunday. The festival that I created in the city commemorates the life of Ruben Salazar, and it commemorates the Chicano Moratorium. We're the only city in the country who produces an event, celebrating the Chicano Moratorium. People throw their autonomous moratoriums, but we have the largest in the country.
Yeah.
And it's in Santa Ana. Over the past couple of years that we've had the Chicano Heritage Festival, this has been a platform where we, number one, honor the life of Ruben Salazar because he was a Santa Ana resident.
Yeah.
Number two is we celebrate our stories. Many of the ways that we do that is art and music and car shows and cruising and handball tournaments, basketball tournaments. And what really makes me excited is what you're going to hear on the stage. The headliner of the Chicano Heritage Festival this year, I'll share breaking news here, is El Chicano, a legendary Chicano group who played here where you and I are interviewing at the Paramount. But El Chicano will be the headliner. For more information, please follow us related to the Chicano Heritage Festival at Hernandez for Santa Ana. Over the last couple of years, this event came together, and I want to give flowers to Joey Quiñones and Sal Rodriguez from War. Without these two, the Chicano Heritage Festival wouldn't have existed. When I threw the first one in 2023, actually the first one was at the Delhi community in 2022. But in 2023, I worked with Joey Quiñones and Sal Rodriguez from War, and we created a festival that is now a tradition in the city. The festival included Johnathan headlining, Willie G and the Midnighters, the Sinceres, Kid Frost, Lighter Shade of Brown, Val the Wonder, D-Mar, Funk Freaks. We've had the Ultons, the Sinceres, Vicky Tafoya, the McCharmleys, Tierra, Malo, Daz. Let me see. We've had so many different artists that have performed for this festival for free. And that's what this event is about. It's about using, arts and music and all of these different platforms to talk about predominantly brown stories. And that's what Chicano Heritage Month is about. So throughout all of August and for the rest of this year, we're going to make sure that that we're standing up for our community. And number one, that we're getting ICE out of California. And if there's a month where you want to be proud to be brown, it's going to be the month of August.
Hey.
Because if it ain't brown, it ain't down.
Hey. Johnathan, thank you so much for this powerful conversation. I definitely feel like whoever's listening, use this as a resource for you to push your city members, council members to try to make different changes or at least bring up the conversation. I think that's how everything starts. And unless we're giving ourselves the space to do it, we're going to continue isolating ourselves like we do in our neighborhood sometimes. If we don't know your neighbor, you're just in a box every day. You don't know anybody. Like, let's get out of that. Let's build this. And it can be awkward. I'm not the type of person to be, like I mentioned, talking to random people, but I'm making the effort. And that's about doing that. Just having the initiative to just get it done with the goal in mind that you want to create internal change within yourself, and then let it flow into your community.
Exactly. Palabra.
But dude, thank you so much. And if people want to follow you on Instagram or keep up to date with your work, where can people check that out?
Yeah. Hernandez for Santana. And I'm also at JonathanRyanHernandez.com. I'm running for California State Assembly District 68 to represent the state of California in the respective cities of Anaheim, Orange, and Santa Ana. If you would like to support those efforts, you can follow us at Hernandez for Santa Ana. We're going to be looking to advocate for decreasing the Costa Hawkins, the rent cap at the state of California, to 3% to reflect Santa Ana. We're looking to ensure that we're protecting healthcare, Medi-Cal, and EBT benefits by fighting to protect those essential services. And then lastly, we want to create balance when it comes to the issue of public safety. We need elected leaders who are going to challenge qualified immunity and state-sanctioned police violence. I'm committed to doing that. I'm doing that already, and I plan on organizing members of the assembly once I'm elected to start to be true champions for justice and accountability.
Dude, thank you so much for doing this, man. And I'm glad I met you. And I hope we can continue collaborating in the future.
Likewise, palabra. It's an honor.
Hey, man.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, for sure, man.
Thank you. This was dope.
Hey, everybody else, you're listening to KQBH-LP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM, a community service of the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory. And you just finished listening to The Social Primate. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.
Trying to live my life, not the way God intended, but the way my ancestors planted seeds and tended. Ain't trying to spit impressive, I don't do it for incentives. I do it for my family, I do it for my primos, I do it for my aunties, I do it for my tios, abuelitos, pueblo unido. For my Masawali and the campesinos, Filipinos, sacrificing for survival, feeding ungrateful Americans, spiteful, talking about shit I came here legally, like them pilgrims that raid, pillage frequently. Check it, G, never get the hood out of me. Popping in my sector, heart pump blood of nomadic chichimecas. I ain't ignorant to the fact we need more than love, sacrifice and fight. We just trying to get by, smudging down with the smoke of cedar. Offer flesh to our mother, just a sliver. Singing songs to the river, iridescent duck feather. Burning medicinal with the love of my life on the Donati light. I connecting with the land where I stand. Rattle in hand with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day. Connecting with the land where I stand, rattle in hand with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day.
Guardianos de altar, gente en este que jaguar. Somos hijos del volcán con tambores del alma. Los ataco con garra, I'm boots on the ground. Today, mañana y el día que sigue, you will be missed. Dear Vanessa Guillen, aretes are beaded, long hair is braided. Half my head is shaven, can't straighten what's fluid. The two spirits sacred like Muisca ruins. Hawad, I beat the case I wasn't supposed to win. When you pick sobriety, you chose to win. From the side of the city where civilians speak Spanish. Not my language, but the lengua of Princess Isabella. An architect of genocide like Juniper Serra. She sponsored decimation of our pre-Hispanic nations. I'm a pre-Hispanic native and I swear to defend the feathers that adorn my head.
Connecting with the land where I stand, rattle in hand with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day. Connecting with the land where I stand, rattle in hand with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day.
Esos palos y pasajes en el lago Iguaque, y los borriquines que viven en la tierra Lenape, lágrimas que caen adentro del serape. Yo recuerdo de los mangos y también aguacates, Huizcahuecha cuando entro al combate, de la luna enamorado mientras hablo con Bachue, blowing different in the trees. Maybe I could find a hibernation in this station. This a new sensation, vibing on degrees. Maybe I could find a different world continuous when I've been flowing high across the 7 seas. Maybe you could feel the way you feel, but I could love you anyway, and even if you disagree. Maybe if you realizing everything we living, like living solo different in the trees. Once you realize that all connections that are spiritual and written only maybe in the leaves. This is where the motherfucking mangoes grow. You tell me if you really flow, but if you disbelieve. But all I know is life is really different. Even when you pass this earth, you ain't gon' never ever leave. Exists in every particle, in every article, regardless, written in the spitting that I breathe. Love, love, love.
Connecting with the land, where I stand, rattle in hand, with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day. Connected with the land, where I stand, rattle in hand, with my band, grateful for the day. I heard the wind say, live on another day, live on another day.